Hello, class. It is 1 o'clock. Time to start. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Terrific. Okay. As always, I will start with a 1-minute meditation. So get comfortable, close your eyes, and we start now. Hope you find that valuable. It looks like there's 13 of us in the classroom today at this moment. So a little low. Are you done with midterm exams or do you still have some to go?
Our last one was Friday, so now we're done.
Terrific. All right. Good. Congratulations. You've moved past the midpoint of the semester. You're going on to conquer the second half of the second half of the year. So the last quarter. All right. Now I have received a lot of emails from groups asking for feedback and comments and revision. I've suggested lots of revisions, and groups have shaped up their materials, and several groups are ready to collect data today. And maybe a few groups are not yet ready and might collect next week. I noticed referring to the syllabus just now, I noticed that we have no class next week or the week after. Next week is Chakri Day, and the one after that is Songkran, I think. Yes. So even though we're not having class for a couple of weeks, the groups that are not yet ready to collect data today will collect it in about maybe a week or less. They may send you some forms to complete, like Google Forms or whatnot. They might send to you by line. I haven't even checked line lately, but that's one way that people are collecting data. Like a Google form link on the line group would take you to be a participant in different groups, projects. Is there anything I should speak to announcement-wise? Any thoughts, considerations about the group projects or about the rest of the semester or anything? You have any questions? All right, well, today I will give a lecture, and then we will, we have several groups collecting data, and we have several groups who want to talk with me. So for the ones that are collecting data, if you need to collect data during the Zoom call, during the Zoom meeting, please speak up now. Someone asks a question about the final exam. Someone asked, what class materials will be tested in the final exam? Everything in the textbook, right? No, everything since the midterm. So not before the midterm, but after the midterm, all the lecture notes. So you're going to be tested on lecture notes. All right. Any other questions? Right. So I'll be meeting with some groups after our Zoom lecture. I'd like to meet with the groups that need least amount of time first, followed by next more amounts of time. So let's set up a order of meeting. Also, it might be more convenient and more private if I could meet over like a phone call, or if you could set up a individual meeting with me. That might be more handy or convenient than the Zoom call. I'm not sure. But I know that I need to meet with a few groups today. Anyway, so if you're collecting data, you just want to do that by sending links in the line group, I think would maybe be best. And if you as participants, if you could complete that by today, after class today, please, that would be good, because the more that you delay and you put it off, the less likely you are to actually do it. So if we could have you participate today, that would be ideal. Thanks. All right. I think we're ready to go on to lecture now. So I'm going to share screen. Today's topic is on presenting your research. This is a very important step of the scientific process. If you don't present or publish or publicize or disperse your findings to others, then it's like you only did the research for your own benefit, which is, good for you, but the scientific community and the scientific process is connected with the community. So it's good to share your results so that others can build on your results by asking new questions that are only evident or only come to mind after seeing your research and your results. So your research is the next step that other researchers can stand on to do their research. All right, so the research is completed only when your results are shared with others, with the scientific community. That's a quote from the American Psychological Association. In this class, you will be presenting your research to our classmates, your classmates. If your research was groundbreaking and highly valuable to the research community or scientific community, then it would make sense for you to publish or publicize your results beyond the classroom, such as finding a undergraduate research conference, or maybe a professional research conference, or publishing in a journal. But that's all only for the highest level quality, highest quality projects that really break new ground and offer the scientific community something that they didn't know, and that is very valuable for them, for knowing and for building on. All right, so the APA manual and high-level writing style. I put high level in quotes because I want to differentiate high level from like snobbish or conceited. It's not supposed to be a snobby, conceited, proud, prideful kind of writing style. It's just supposed to be direct and clear. So that's what high level means. The APA manual, we are now in the 7th version. When I was in school, in college, we were just graduating from the 3rd version to the 4th version. Anyway, so each version is supposed to help us as scientific writers to become even more clear and concise and coherent. So these manuals spell out how to write scientifically for publication. And I can recommend that website there as a kind of guide for tips and tricks and style recommendations and stuff. High-level writing means writing directly what is. That means writing about what you know, writing what you find, what you did, just being very direct and very clear. So not using various literary strategies like storytelling, illustration, humor, intrigue, suspense. All of those are very valuable literary techniques, but they don't belong in a scientific report, because high level is trying to be as direct and concise as possible without without using the techniques and strategies of other genres, I guess. High level writing is just academic style. So it's not more intellectual than other styles. High level writing is intended to be concise and to be understood without knowledge or familiarity with the culture of the time. For example, avoid idioms because they are culture bound phrasings, and they rely on cultural knowledge, but they don't make sense outside of a culture or outside of a time epoch or era. So we want to stay free of those limiting verbal tricks or expressions, so that your writing remains timeless and not bound to a particular time or culture. For example, we should be able to read scientific reports from 100 years ago and find them still understandable and still get the point. Language style. Try to avoid biased wording. So when you talk about sexual orientation, use that word, sexual orientation. If you called it sexual preference, then that implies a belief in personal choice in terms of one's sexual orientation, which is a theory that is not endorsed by the mainstream community today. So that's considered biased wording. Next bullet point, people with schizophrenia, rather than calling. So if you're testing people with schizophrenia, you describe them that way, as people with schizophrenia. You don't call them schizophrenics, because that's like prioritizing the disease over the person. So in order to give greater respect, show greater respect to the person, we say it's a person with, and then we describe the condition. And then the next bullet point, you can refer to your population or your participants as, and then specify the exact nationality, unless you're really sampling across an entire continent, for example. So call your participants Chinese or Thai. Don't refer to them as Asian if you're not really testing an assortment or random, like if you're testing Asians, then you need to make sure that, sorry, my, in other words, refer to Asians when you're referring to more than just Thai or Chinese. For example. So be specific when you can be specific, and otherwise be general when it's appropriate to be general. Students, next fourth bullet point, students is a better word than participants, which is also a better word than subjects. If you're talking about subjects, it's unclear if you're talking about humans or animals, because animals are also called subjects. But if you say participants, now you know, or now people, the readers know that you're talking about human beings, because human beings are participants. Animals are not given as much choice to participate. They're less voluntary. So they're not called participants, they're called subjects. And then humans, which are more voluntary, are called participants. And then the most specific level is students. If you're testing students, then you can just call them students. So you don't have to be vague and call them participants. If they're all students, you can call them students. All right, any questions here? Next slide, common low-level writing style. This means I'm talking about the very specific level of rules when it comes to using APA style to write your papers. All right, so if you're talking about a number under 10, spell it out. If it's over 10, or if it's 10 or higher, then use digits. If you're writing like in the same sentence, like there were 9 girls and 12 boys. So for the first number, spell it out 9. And for the second number, use digits 12. I believe that's the rule. And these little rules, these low-level writing styles, they might change from version to version of the APA manual. So for example, I'm teaching this now, and in 5 years, it may change. Maybe all numbers will become digits and not just over 10. We don't know. But for now, this is what I'm teaching, because this is our most recent addition or revision to the APA manual. All right, then here's another one. A, comma, B, comma, and C. This is new, because always before you could write A, comma, B, and C and not need a comma after B. This is a kind of a silly, you could call it a stupid rule. Like, what does it matter really? Does it really have that much bearing on science? No, it doesn't. It is kind of a stupid rule, but as long as everyone is on the same page about which rules they adopt and the tradition, the writing style tradition, if we're all on the same page, then it works. So we're trying to be on the same page. Use a comma after everything in a list, including the second to last item. Next, there's acronyms. Spell the acronym, spell it out first. On your first use of that acronym, spell it out. There are a few examples that you don't have to spell out because they are so well known among so much of the English-speaking population that you don't have to spell them out, such as, what's a common one? I can't think of one right now. There are some common acronyms that don't need to be spelled out. I can't think of them right now. Maybe someone has right here in the chat box. Let's see. BBC. That's a good example. Yes, I agree. You don't have to spell that out. BBC, everyone knows that it's a channel, a news agency. So for a few of them, like BBC, you don't have to spell out, but normally 99% of acronyms need to be spelled out. That means if you want to shorten something to SD for sleep deprivation, just spell it out the first time and then use the parentheses immediately after. And so inside the parentheses goes your shortened form, and then you can use that SD outside of the parentheses after that. And the last example here, please use surnames only. Yesterday, I was reading an article in a philosophical journal, and I noticed that they used the first and last names. That's not what we do in psychology. In psychology journals and articles and books and magazines, and well, I don't know about magazines. Normally, like 90% of the time or more, please just use the last name. I would say use it 100% of the time. You don't have to use first names. In psychology, we don't normally use first names. So you might see first names in textbooks or magazines, maybe, or in lectures. But in scientific writing, in psychology, we just use the surname. Here are some examples of references formatted in APA style. What can we say? I'm going to I'm going to highlight certain things about just the very first one. So it's the surname, comma, first initial, middle initial, if it's offered. Some authors don't like to add their middle name or their middle initial. They might not even have a middle name, especially if they're Thai, for example. And then the year, followed by a period, years in parentheses, then the title of the article. If there is a colon punctuation in the title, then the first letter after the colon is capitalized. Otherwise, only the first letter of the title is capitalized. All the rest of the words are lowercase. still capitalize proper names. Okay, then you have a period followed by the title of the journal in italics, comma, followed by the volume in italics, followed immediately in parentheses by the issue of the journal. Notice I don't have to put volume 58. You're allowed to put the word VOL dot as a shortened form of the word volume, but you don't have to put the word volume. You can just, so American Psychologist is the journal name, comma, 58 in italics is the journal volume, or the volume of the journal. And the issue number is immediately in parentheses there, because different journals will publish maybe one per year, one volume per year, or 2 or 3 or 4, usually not more than 5 or 6 in a year. So you put the issue number in parentheses, not italicized, then comma, then the page number. You don't have to put P dot for page number. We used to do that. You still see that a lot of times. You don't have to do that now. It seems like we are phasing out the P dot or the PP dot, which used to stand for paper or page. So there's just the range of pages from the journal, comma, and then this is kind of new information in the last 5 years, maybe longer, maybe as much as 10 years ago, we started to put the DOI, stands for Digital Object Identifier, which is a stable internet location where you can find the journal's, the article's title and abstract, usually just those two things. And like information like where did it come from, the journal name, issue number, etc. So the DOI is a permanent location to reference the source. Yeah, put all of those kinds of information into your references if you have all of that information available. The next example is a book. Notice that the book, again, the book title, just the first letter is capitalized. After the book, put a period, and then the city, followed by the, so it's like the state, then the city, then a colon, and then the publisher name. Third example is if you are, okay, so the second example is if you're citing a whole book, like you're just referencing to a book in general, not particularly to not to a particular chapter, but to the whole book, because maybe the whole book is on a certain theme and you're referencing that theme or that thesis or that idea, the basic idea. Oh, good. Someone found a APA citation generator on that website. Excellent. Thank you. And here's a question. In your opinion, is it okay for professional researchers to use these websites for citation? Yeah, in my opinion, it is okay to do that, to use those. I think that we are going to start, like, professional researchers are going to start relying on these citation formatting engines more and more as time goes on, because we don't really find it convenient to have to look up APA style rules every time we want to format something. So we're going to start relying on engines and generators more and more as they become available to us. So please feel free to use any such generators you have. Thank you to whoever found that website and shared it with the class. Feel free to use that. Thank you. So this third example on this page is an example of how to cite a single chapter from a book. So to do that, you cite the authors. Now this is in the case where each chapter is contributed by different authors. So sometimes a book is written entirely by a single author, but other times, I mean, if the whole book is by a single author, you can just cite the author and the whole book. But if each chapter is contributed by a different author or a set of authors, and you just want to cite a single chapter by a particular author or set of authors, then you can cite just those authors, just that chapter from the book. So you cite the title of the article, sorry, title of the chapter, followed by the word in, and then the author's names and the book title. And then you cite it just like you were citing a book, but you can put the page numbers in parentheses. You know, these rules that I'm teaching you about this today, they may change again in the next, I don't know, 1 year or 5 years. We don't know how long these rules are going to last. But I'm teaching APA style, and APA style does change from every few years. So how important is APA style? How important is it that you learn APA style? That's a good question. It's like, how important is it that you learn good table manners? You're going to be okay if you don't learn any table manners, but you're going to do better in life if you know how to, if you have basic table manners. So that's a good example or a good explanation about whether it's important to learn APA style or not. It is better to learn it. You will score higher. When teachers look at your paper and grade it, they will be more favorable and more impressed and more patient with you. So your score will probably be positively impacted if you can format in APA style. Not just this year, but through your college career. And if you go to graduate school in something in psychology, then obviously that there also. APA style is kind of important. If you can write in APA style, then your writing will be more, you will make a better impression on people, even outside of psychology and outside of academia. Because you will simply look more, your writing will look more polished, and it will look, the word comes to mind, high level. High level is that writing style that we talked about earlier on an earlier slide. It seems to be more, it kind of commands respect from people if you can write that way. So it's a good thing. It kind of adds more weight to whatever you're trying to say. If you can use good writing style, APA style particularly. Next slide, citation methods, examples. You can say Berger, parentheses, 2008, conducted a replication of Milgram's, parentheses, the year. Original obedience study. Notice that I'm talking about these people, not as papers and not as studies. So if you can talk about the ideas of people rather than the ideas of papers or the ideas of studies, try to bring it back to the people, the humans that are instrumental in originating the ideas or the data collection and stuff. Number two, people can be surprisingly obedient to authority figures, and then cite not one source, but two sources. Because two sources say the same idea, so you can state your idea and then cite all of the sources that support that idea. If it's one source, cite one source. If it's multiple sources, cite multiple sources. Separate them with a semicolon. Number three, Mel and colleagues can be written Mel et al. Dot after al, not after et, and then the year. And you could instead, you could write it and colleagues. Mel and colleagues, and then follow with the parentheses and the year. You don't have to say and colleagues, you could use either one. Et al. and colleagues are equivalent, and you can always substitute one for the other. Next, but yeah.
Can we use the method shown in 1 and 2 on the same paper?
Mm-hmm.
So like the name can be outside the parentheses and inside the parentheses too.
Oh, yes, yes, thank you. Thanks for asking. You can cite the author, the surname in the sentence outside parentheses or inside parentheses. So Mel et al. 2007 found that women and men spoke about the same number of words per day on average. Is an example of a citation. And you use et al. If there are 3 or more authors. It used to be that you have to spell out all the surnames. If there are 5 surnames, spell them out all on the first mention, and then after that you can shorten it to et al. But now we are simplifying this, and I think it's the 7th, starting with the 7th APA manual edition, we're shortening it to, if there's 3 or more authors, you can just call it et al. In the very first instance that you cite them. So it doesn't have to be the second instance onward. It can start even in the first instance, that you can shorten all of the surnames to simply et al. Sections of the paper. So your paper that you're going to turn in at the end of the semester here, which is now worth not just 25% of your grade, but now it's worth 34% of your grade. The reason it's worth an extra 9% is that I moved your quiz scores, your quiz weight. I shifted that from 15% down to 6%, and the 9%, I shifted that over to your research paper weight. So it's now heavier than 25% of your grade. It's 34% of your grade now.
Oh,
yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. So there are no more quizzes in this class. I decided to do that because I felt that particularly because of COVID disrupting the stability of the curriculum, as well as the stability of our individual lives, I felt like we could use a break, and this course could be made a bit simpler and easier, and I could cut out the reading assignments because I basically summarized the readings in my slides, so I could ease up the burden on you as well as myself if we just cut that out. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. Glad you appreciate it as well. I like it. I'm happier doing away with the readings and the quizzes. All right. Sections of the paper. You've got your title page. That should come first, and your abstract on the second page. So you don't start your abstract on the title page. You always have a page break between them, then a page break after the abstract so that your introduction starts on page 3, then your method. Oh, and then after that, there's no more page breaks until you get to the references section. So after your discussion, where's the references section? I should have inserted right between discussion and appendices. There's the references section right in between there. You don't page break between intro, method, results, discussion, but you do page break after the discussion. Your references start on a new page. Then appendices start on a new page. Tables start on a new page. Figures start on a new page. So there's always a page break between those things. The only no page breaks are the main part of the paper, starting with the intro, ending with the discussion. So that's continuous. So when you finish your intro, then you just take, press enter one time and put your section heading method, and then one more enter and start your method, for example.
What's the difference between an appendices, table, and figures?
Oh, okay, great question. Let me go ahead and update this slide with the references section, by the way. Okay, so appendices are, for example, if you wish to include your survey, you want to include that in your paper so the readers can read all of your items and critically analyze and consider them for themselves. Or if you wanted to cite all of your data, like your raw data in a database, that would be an appendix. If you could mention it all in a table, or if you wanted to show your picture stimuli, or show any of your stimuli. So these are kinds of things that you could put in an appendix, or your instructions to your participants. Like if you had a one paragraph instruction to your participants, maybe that's very, like, it's important for proper replication of your study, but it's too much information to put in your method section. If it's a whole paragraph or a whole page, Yeah, lots of things that you can't really fit in your paper, that there isn't really a traditional space or slot for this kind of information. You could put that in an appendix. Tables are for very concise and neat and organized displays of data, such as means, standard deviations, sample size, conditions. If your information can be made very organized and very concise, it can be a table. And the last one, figures, that's for graphic displays of data, such as line graphs, bar graphs, and other kinds of graphs. If a photograph is very important for interpreting or understanding your study, that could be a figure. If it's kind of peripheral and not so critical to understanding your study, then you could put the photograph as in your appendix or not put it in the paper at all. Not every paper has an appendix. In fact, most papers don't have an appendix. Tables, almost all papers have tables. Figures, about maybe 2/3 or 3/4 of papers have a figure or figures. Or maybe more than that. Tables and figures are very common. Appendices, not so common. Appendices are usually the biggest, longest. They put all kinds of lengthy details and often are unnecessary. Any questions? Maybe too much information about this stuff for you, but I think it's all good, useful information that you will learn sooner or later anyway. Besides publishing in a journal, you could also publicize your research results by offering a formal talk at a conference. This is basically a PowerPoint, like a lecture. So if you're going to do a conference talk, aim for about 1 minute per slide, use bullet points and tables and figures and text. If you're presenting your research as a conference poster, this is the other major traditional pathway of publicizing your results, your findings. A conference poster is what I used to require for this course before COVID. So to do that, you would make a large printed poster. If it's a very small informal conference, you could make a smaller printing, such as a 1/2 meter by 1/2 meter. But if it's a real like national conference, international conference, like a major event with say more than 100 people coming, you would want to invest in printing a real full-size poster, like 1 meter by 1.5 meters, that would be posted on a so every conference has these rooms, conference rooms with these bulletin boards or walls or surfaces on which you can attach your poster And then during the poster session, which would be like a 1.5 hour period of time during the conference when people can visit the poster room to look at all the posters, then you would stand next to your poster to the side and be quiet and allow visitors to come by and take a look at your research and politely offer to summarize the results for them if they want, or just let them read it for themselves because everything's right there for them after all. The purpose of going to a conference at all is not only to publicize your results, but also to make professional to meet professionals, to make professional friendships. So it's not only to learn about others' research and to publicize your own research, but it's also to make friends. The social aspect or element of professional conferences is often not really mentioned or talked about, but that's almost the main, it's one of the main features of professional conferences, is to rub elbows with people, to get to know people, and to have a good experience, to enjoy it yourself and enjoy the program, to remember it as a meaningful life event, having attended the thing, as well as to share your ideas and to get new ideas from other people. It's like a school science fair for adults. It encourages meaningful interactions among researchers. And you can see templates in the textbook for making a poster, but I guess we don't really need to do that so much for this class. If you're interested in publishing or attending a research conference, if you're like, for example, if you're interested in graduate school in psychology, do take a look and become familiar and maybe plan to present your research. Like your senior thesis, you could present that at a national or international conference, including the kind put on by our own faculty and our own university, for example. Right. Okay, so research poster is one kind of one form of, you could call it publication, but better word is publicizing. Conference talk is another publicizing. We tend to use the word publication only for publishing papers. Next slide, the introduction, the opening. The introduction is a section of your paper. It introduces the research questions and explains why it is interesting. So the very opening paragraph, which means the very first paragraph of your whole paper, you could call that the opening of your introduction. It explains why your topic is interesting, why it's interesting to you, and why it's interesting to other people. By the way, based on this lecture, you should go back to your papers that you've written, and you should revise and improve your papers for later at the end of the semester submission. So I want you to revise and improve your papers according to this lecture, what I'm telling you now. So your opening paragraph should be telling your readers, me, why your topic is interesting. Put in information like this: your general observations about the topic under study, expressed in ordinary language. You don't have to be overly high level. You don't have to try to force unnaturally technical jargon, especially in your opening paragraph. Try to use normal everyday language, but still concise and efficient and direct. Second bullet point there. Observations should be about people and their behavior. So talk about people and behavior, not about researchers and their research. That means if you're talking about researchers and their research, refer to them as people also. Refer to them as people and refer to their discoveries. Yeah. Third bullet point, give readers a clear sense of what the research is about and why they should care about it. In other words, what your paper is about. There should be an indication or a clue or a summary or idea about what your paper is going to be about. So the reader knows it, even just after reading the first paragraph, they know what your paper is about. And that final subpoint, will the answer fill a gap in the literature? If so, you can say that. Will it provide a test of an important theory? If so, then you should say that. Does it have practical implications? If so, you can say that at the end of your opening paragraph. So I'm giving you tips now on how to make your opening paragraph very good. I know that it was written by only one person in each group, but for the revision of your paper, I want everyone in your group, every group member should be involved in revising every single paragraph of the whole paper. All of you are responsible for revising your whole paper. That's a very important point. You should not sit back and let other people revise their own paragraphs, because that's not just their paragraph, that's your paragraph, even if they wrote it. The reason it's your paragraph, it's your paper, you're a co-author, and you are being graded heavily. 1/3 of your grade is based on this paper. So you don't want to trust or simply put your hands up and say, not my business, not my obligation or responsibility, because it is your business and your responsibility. It's your paper, and you have to be responsible for revising the entire paper, even if you didn't write it. So improve your paper. That's the assignment now, is to improve your paper. All right, after the opening paragraph comes the literature review. This constitutes a kind of argument about why the research question is worth addressing. You're not saying in every single paragraph, you're not saying, this is why we're studying, this is why we have to do this study. Instead, you're just writing about other people's research. But what you're implying, you're indirectly implying to the reader that the research that you're summarizing is relevant, it matters, and it's important for the reader to know about because it suggests why your study is worth doing. The reason that your study is worth doing is because no one has done it exactly the way you did it. Other people have come close to doing it exactly as you did it, but they didn't do it exactly like you did it. So because others have come close, you want to tell about their research to the reader. That will kind of justify your research project. The reason that other people's studies that are similar to yours justifies your research is it's related. They did their research. So if it's related and they did their research, it kind of, it supports the value of your research. And it shows where they left off, which is where you begin. You cannot understand, the reader cannot understand how your research fills a gap in the scientific literature if they don't know where the gap starts and where the gap ends. And the starting and ending point of your gap that you are filling in the scientific literature, by doing your research project, you're filling in a gap. They have to know where that gap is by knowing where did someone else do something similar and where did someone else do something similar, so that we can infer where is the gap in the scientific literature that you are filling in with doing this research project. So by the time that the reader has finished reading your introduction, which summarizes all the previous research that is relevant to your research, then the reader should be convinced that your research question makes sense and that your research study is a logical next step in the ongoing research process. Essentially, you're using the literature to argue that your question is worth testing. Examples: describe a phenomenon, illustrate with studies, describe 1 to 2 theories to explain it. This is an example of an introduction section. So you describe something, illustrate with studies, describe the theories that explain it, describe how the theories compete against each other or cooperate. What do they have in common? What do they have that's different from each other? And then, or you could invent a theory that explains the studies that you summarized. For applied research, you can present a theory that might relate to the real world. And you can present a hypothesis to test that theory. Your hypothesis, so I told everyone to come up with your research question. Your research question is almost the same as your research hypothesis. The question is just a question. It ends with a question mark. The hypothesis is your answer to that question, and the theory is a deeper level. The theory, so your hypothesis is based on a theory, and your theory informs you what you're supposed to predict. So if you have two or more theories, you can choose one as your preferred theory and the one that informs you about what you're going to predict. Then if your prediction comes true, then you have supported that theory. So there's theory, hypothesis, and question. Question is the most it's opinion free. The hypothesis is your opinion, and your opinion is based on some theory. The theory should have already come out in your introduction section. So your introduction section, as you're summarizing different research papers and articles, it should mention your theory or theories, and you should mention your preferred theory at some point in the introduction section. So the introduction section is a literature review. Instead of Williams 2004 found that it's better to start a paragraph by indicating something about why you are describing this particular study. So for example, you could say, a number of researchers have investigated the effect of sleep deprivation on cognitive abilities. So you start very broad. And then that's the very start of your paragraph. The very start of your paragraph starts with a sentence that's very kind of, it tells at the very broad and general level what that paragraph is. Then sort of the second sentence gets more narrow, where you're talking about particular author and what they found. And then it gets even more narrow by telling, well, usually you don't start by telling what they found. You start by saying that normally, okay, when you're summarizing an article, you start with what they asked. What was their research question? Or their hypothesis. You don't have to do both, you one or the other. So they predicted, or they suspected, or they thought this, or they asked this question. So you start at that kind of vague level, and then you talk about their methodology next. So if you didn't already write about the methodology in your introduction section, you need to go back and revise that and correct it, make it better by telling the methodology used by the researchers. So research question or hypothesis, then their methodology, then their results, and then what it means to them, what it means to you. That's the order in which you want to talk about things as you're summarizing the literature. Be balanced in your literature review. It's not acceptable to ignore contradictory evidence. Besides, a large part of what makes a research question interesting is uncertainty about its answers, the answer. And here's a personal example. In my research from 2012 to 2014, I made the mistake of not discussing contradictory evidence that was present in the literature. So I didn't mention it because it did not fit with my theory or my hypothesis. So I ignored some maybe contradicting evidence from the literature, and then many journal rejections later, a journal reviewer told me to consider contradictory evidence or findings, and I obeyed that reviewer, and my article was then accepted in that journal. So it taught me something important, which I want to pass on to you. I want to teach you that imbalance is hard to hide, and bias should be removed from the researcher and from the paper. Science should not be biased. Science is supposed to be unbiased. Let me say a couple more words about that. Why would it be biased? Why was I biased when I was doing my research back in 2012 to 2014? I was biased, and many researchers are biased because we invest so much of our time, effort, confidence, and because we are often susceptible to confirmation bias, also called belief bias, where we don't want to look for contradictory evidence. We only want to find evidence that supports our views. The problem with this is it's not very scientific. So if we are really serious about being good scientists, we need to be balanced and not be guided by confirmation bias. We need to drop our belief biases and be more even-handed and a little bit more, or a lot more, detached from the outcomes. Meaning we need to look at the data and see how it supports or doesn't support our hypothesis and our preferred theory and our beliefs. If the data do not support our beliefs, we need to detach from our prior beliefs, at least somewhat. So we need to be guided more by data than by beliefs if we're going to be proper scientists, believing in the scientific method and the scientific way. To be proper scientists, we need to be guided by the data, not by belief bias or confirmation bias. So that's a very heavy, deep, important lesson that is hard to grasp until you actually do it, until you're in that situation and you really have to let go of your prior beliefs about why you made your predictions the way you did, why you predicted that. You have to let go of those biases, those beliefs, when you're really looking at the data, analyzing it and interpreting it, and especially when you're writing your discussion section where you interpret those results for the reader, you have to let go of your belief bias, your confirmation bias. I know we normally have a break after an hour or so. I think I'd like to skip the break today in the interest of providing more time for students to collect data and participate in data collection. So I'm just going to continue through lecture today. Sorry for the long, uninterrupted lecture. The next is the introduction's closing paragraph. This is the last paragraph of your introduction section of your paper. It contains a clear statement of the main research questions and hypothesis, often expressed in terms of operational definitions of key variables. You do want to operationalize your variables even before you get to your, I'm a bit unsure about this actually, whether you want to operationalize your variables in the closing paragraph or in the method section. I would be satisfied with either way, but I think it's important. Yes, it is important at least to give some degree of definition, some level of definition of your variables needs to happen in the closing paragraph. You might not need to explain that you're measuring empathy with the so-and-so's empathy scale. You don't have to be quite that specific. You don't have to say in the closing paragraph that you're measuring empathy with 13 questions. You don't have to be that specific yet, but you need to describe your variables and what they mean to you in the context of this study, such as measured by a questionnaire or subjective measure, subjective self-report. That's at least not too specific and not too general, but a kind of intermediate level of operationally defining your key variables that should happen in the closing paragraph. And number two, a smooth transition toward the next section, the method section, such as by telling a way to test your research question or hypothesis. In other words, you can start to describe how you ran your study. Even before you get to the method section, you can already be giving an overview of the method section. And that's a good thing because the reader enjoys or appreciates getting a little heads up, a little warning or a little preview of what they're going to read about in the next section. The method section is next. Describe how you conducted your study using enough detail that other researchers could replicate all the important elements, such as basic demographic characteristics of the participants, how they were recruited, whether they were randomly assigned to conditions, how the variables were manipulated or measured, how counterbalancing was accomplished, and so on. Avoid irrelevant details. Your method section is meant to allow other researchers to replicate your research if necessary. It doesn't have to be replicated exactly the way you did it, but it should be replicable close enough to be able to capture the effects that you plan or expect to find. The method contains the following subsections. There's the participants section, design section, materials, and procedures. procedure section. I guess it's usually singular. Materials is usually plural. Sometimes I'm not sure. Maybe the procedures can be phrased in the plural with an S. Anyway, there's some definitions of those sections. Demographic details, such as the number of males and females, were they left or right-handed, their average age, sexual orientation, if that's something relevant to your research. If it's not relevant, don't tell about it. Nationality, if it's relevant, mention it. If it's not relevant, don't. Kind of anything that's relevant about the participants goes in the participants section. The design is your study method. If it's like a the design is the section in which you give the most general description of your method technique. You tell what your variables are. You tell how you measured, whether you're splitting your participants into groups or not, whether you're testing them multiple times or not. If you're using a survey, you can mention that in the design section. So the design section is where you tell the very general level of description of what you did, what's your study, how you did your study. The next section is called the materials section. This is a good place to mention the reliability or validity of your instruments. If you're using instruments that have been used by other researchers already and have been validated, you can mention that in that section of the paper. And then your procedures is the section in which you tell how you did your study from the point of view either of the participant or the researcher. Also, you can combine sections. You can talk about the design and procedure, or the materials and procedure, combine them into a single subsection heading, materials and procedure, and then tell all your materials and procedures in that single subsection if you want. So it's a little bit, I mean, there's some flexibility in which subsections you use, how you group them. There's some flexibility in the order in which you present these subsections. You could, for example, you could skip the participant section, or you could skip the design section and you can combine the materials and procedure, or you could swap the order, procedures first, then materials second. There's some flexibility with this section. But this is the basic general traditional order. You go usually participants, then design, then materials, then procedure. Then there's the results section. This is where you tell the main results of the study, including the results of statistical analyses. This usually begins with certain preliminary issues. For example, whether participants' responses were included or excluded from the analyses and why, which kinds of responses were excluded, which kinds of participants were excluded, how responses were combined, if they were, results of any manipulation checks could be mentioned here. So this is at the very beginning of the results section. After you tackle these necessary details that describe need to be mentioned before you talk about the main results, then you can talk about the main results, which is you could talk about your results in terms of how they answer your research questions, if you had multiple research questions, or you could organize your results by going from general to more specific, giving the answers to research questions in words, present the relevant statistics, qualify the answer if necessary, summarize the results. These are just, this is just suggestions, how to organize your results section. All right, next is the discussion section in which you summarize the research. The summary can be short and simple. Then you provide theoretical implications. Do the results provide support for any existing theories? If not, how can your results be explained? Although you don't have to provide a definitive explanation or detailed theory of your results, you can at least outline one or offer one or more possible explanations. And third point here, practical implications, not always required, but you can offer practical implications of your results, how the results can be used, by whom, to accomplish what, in what kind of real world situations or settings, or for what kinds of goals. That's called practical implication. So there's theoretical and there's practical. Some papers lend themselves more to theoretical implications. Some projects more to practical implications. Depends on the particular study you did and why you did it. Some studies are done more for their practical value. Some are more for their theoretical value. After discussing that, then you can talk about limitations. Limitations are not always required. You don't always have to talk about limitations, but in this paper for this class, I do want you to, because it is a good academic exercise, and it is a good exercise at being circumspect, meaning looking at your own flaws, your own methodological, your own procedural flaws, and the flaws in the data, the flaws in terms of the hypothesis or the theories. So it's good to talk about flaws, personal flaws included. And you could do so in the limitations portion of the paper. You could even title it or give a section heading called limitations. You don't have to. It could just be a paragraph that is toward the end of the discussion section, not labeled. But anyway, you want to talk about your limitations for this paper at least. Perhaps there are problems with this internal or external validity. Perhaps the manipulation was not very effective, or the measures were not very reliable. Perhaps there's some evidence that participants did not fully understand their task, or that they were suspicious of the intent of the researchers. But do not overdo it. All studies have limitations. Just pick one or two or three limitations that seem like they could have influenced the results. Explain how they could have influenced the results and suggest ways to deal with them. Ways to deal with them so that future researchers who want to replicate your study can do so and do it better. Suggestions for future research. If the study did not satisfactorily answer the original research question, what will it take to do so? What new research questions has the study raised? Identify and clarify each question, suggest alternative answers, and even suggest ways that they could be studied. So suggest future research. That's a nice way to end a discussion section. But sorry, not completely ending. The very last part of the discussion is the final sentence or the final paragraph. The final sentence, it's nice if it can be thought-provoking, or it can return to the problem or issue introduced at the beginning paragraph to touch back to the overall theme of the research, to state how your research has addressed your research question or the issue or problem dealt with in your paper. And finally, after that, there's the references section, which there's a page break between discussion and references. Then there's the references section. After that, then there can be appendices, optional. Then there's tables and a figure or figures. if any. Each of them goes on its own page after the references section. Now your assignment, and this is the last slide of this lecture. I want to see that you know how to format your entire paper correctly in APA format. So I want you to submit on Blackboard your entire paper, one per group, with section headings, but no content. I don't want you to submit like, I'm sorry, you can leave your introduction section and you can improve on it, but I'm not going to read your introduction section again, and I'm not going to grade it again yet. I want to see that you know how to format your entire paper, start to finish, correctly in APA format, with the section headings, the subsection headings, the layout, the centering, the left justifying, the indenting, the page breaks, the ordering. I want to see that you know how to put it all in nice, organized, neat, properly formatted structure and shape and order. You can, so I want to see the title page, the abstract page, but you don't have to write an abstract. Do put a title. I want to see that you have a title for your research project. Make sure you put page numbers so your items fall on the correct pages. I mentioned, like at the beginning of this lecture, page 1, page 2, page 3. Let things appear on the proper pages. You can include the introduction section that you have written already, then follow the model on our textbook. Look at page 297 to page 300 in the PDF textbook for our class. This provides you a sample, a template. For the title page, I want you to list the members' names in alphabetical order by surname. For your references section, please format all of your references in correct APA format. I offered you examples of APA format on this lecture, in this lecture. Learn from your group members' work, learn what they did, and you know, judge for yourself if they did it correctly. If they did, then learn from them. Learn from each other. Everyone should contribute to this assignment to learn from it. So I don't want this being done all by one person. I want all 3, 4, 5, 2, 6, however many group members you have. Every single member should be involved in this assignment. It is due in 1 week on Blackboard. I know we're not having class next week, but you're still turning this in by or before Tuesday next week. And that is the end of class. Do you have any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, my next thing is, who needs to collect data during our Zoom meeting? Does anyone need to collect it while we're all here on the Zoom meeting? Because if not, then we can collect data by, you could post your link to your experiment on the line group where people can find it and go there, participate. That way we don't all have to be on this Zoom meeting during participation, because I do want to use this Zoom meeting space for meeting with individual groups if that's possible. Someone's asking some questions here. Do we have any sample for how we should do the assignment? It's a little bit confusing, sorry. Yes, you do have a template in our main textbook. Please go to page 297 to 300. This provides you with a whole, like a template of an entire paper, if I'm not mistaken. And it shows you how to properly format your paper using APA format for every single part of the paper. So do please look at that section of our textbook. All right, so there was a group that has shifted to the online platform. I'm very glad for that. Next, we don't have to conduct via live class anymore. Good, thank you. Thank you. All right. Terrific. Any others? Comments or questions? How many groups want to collect data today? Speak up if you want to collect data today. And mention your name. Okay, you don't have to tell us. Never mind. All right. Everyone, please participate in one another's research. Be good participants, good classmates. Thank you. Someone posted group 7, our experiment takes 5 minutes. Please read and follow instructions. If there's any issues, contact at K or Pra. There's the link. So please go ahead and click on that link to be participants. Everyone can go ahead and click on that link in the chat box. That'll take you there. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Another question. Could I have some time to discuss this group assignment with you after this lesson is over? Definitely, yes. Okay, so that's Aiko. If Aiko's group can stay on in the Zoom meeting. Who else wants to talk with me after Aiko's group? All right, there's Natika wants to discuss with me. So Fa, if you could be after Aiko's group. Anyone else? I also welcome you to contact me by phone or email. There's Pavida. So I guess it's going to be Aiko, then Fa, then Pavida. Pavida's group. And then Natasha's group after that. All right, I don't know how we're going to do this with all staying on the Zoom call. Oh, I think, oh, I know. I'll split you up into breakout rooms, and then I think we could do this.
If we're not going to have a meeting with you, do we just leave now?
Yeah, if you're not going to have a meeting, you can leave now. Thank you. I'm going to officially dismiss class now. So I can stop sharing this, can stop recording.